Okay. Finally, I can take a break from doing Canadian shit and get back to doing the important stuff. Too much of my time lately has been spent doing this. Instead of actually gaming. But I'm back on track now. And what better way to come back than with the latest entry in my favorite series. Now, you all know, you've heard at least half a dozen times on this channel how much I love this series. I love the Tales series, but from Grace's F onwards, I started to get doubts. After Vesperia, there was a major shift in how they built the games. Kind of like a new graphics engine, new approach to ideas, and with Zestiria being like the new low point of the series, the lowest point since Dawn of the New World, Symphonia 2, I was really concerned about Tales of Berseria. Boy, am I happy to say the series has been redeemed. So I'm going to try and be as objective about this as possible, but that might not be the easiest thing for somebody in my position. So let's check it out.
Tarks Gauntlet.
The story in this game starts off great. Your main character, Velvet, is just living in a little town after a tragic childhood. She is being raised by Artorias and with her little brother Laphicet. Now, needless to say, as it usually goes with JRPGs, tragedy strikes this town. She faces a death in her family, and shit literally turns inside out in the matter of an instant. Velvet gets transformed into a demon and forced to live in a prison for the next 3 years. In her demon form, she has this large demon hand that she can use to absorb other demons that will live within her. It's a really neat setup and actually leads to some great combat mechanics. While she spends these 3 years in prison, she is getting consistently stronger and stronger and stronger, and her desire for revenge takes on extremes not really witnessed that much in RPG history. This sets a whole new bar for what revenge really means for a protagonist. She is not fueled by the most virtuous of desires, and the further you get into the game and the more you discover how the world works, the more you begin to question if revenge is really what needs to happen. Could she possibly be doing more damage to the world by getting the revenge she seeks? This kind of question, this dichotomy, it grows throughout the game, and it leaves this feeling in the back of your head the whole time, am I doing the right thing? The characters in this game are all deep, they all have these internal struggles. For the first time in a long time, I have to say the character writing for a Tales game is absolutely elite. While Velvet is a flawed character bent on revenge, she's not the only one. Everybody in your party has some tragic, twisted, or nefarious backstory that sows seeds of doubt that you'll carry all the way through the game. Most of these seeds of doubt are wrapped up by the end with a nice little bow, and the resolution actually feels really good. Some of you may be left with some lingering feelings about the resolution of our main character, but it's really a very bittersweet ending, and I'm not going to say any more than that. You won't really be able to see this ending coming, so I'm not really delivering the spoilers here, but it is very bittersweet. Most of the characters all have really great resolutions, and if you watch the credits, stick around for the video that plays after them, because there's some really touching imagery here. There's some really touching resolution. Prior to this game, only one JRPG actually made me shed a tear. That has now changed. This game has pulled on my heartstrings so many times. I actually started crying at least 3 times, and I got choked up at least a half a dozen more. I mean, look at this little bitch up here. That's me. That is me breaking down over a fucking video game. And not many video games can pull this off. So holy crap, I have the utmost respect for the story and character development of Tales of Berseria. Now, of course, story is not the only thing that you're going to play this game for. You probably want to know about the battle system. With every entry in the Tales of series, the battle system changes. Tales of Zestiria was almost ruined by their change in battle system with the armatization. I am very happy to say, armatization is a thing of the past. Or, technically, while this is a prequel to Zestiria, it's a thing of the future. Now don't let this being a prequel dissuade you. If you haven't played Zestiria, it's not necessary at all. In fact, I rage quitted Zestiria. It's one of the only games in the Tales history I had to put down, but I still feel I got the full experience out of Tales of Berseria. So now let's talk about the battle system. You don't have TP anymore. Instead, now you have a soul gauge. The soul gauge is represented by these little blue diamonds down here. Each attack you can do will use up some of your soul gauge. Now you would think one attack means one diamond, but that's not exactly the case. Each attack takes a different amount. Some will use a quarter of a single bezel, while others might use a full one. How many bezels you have on your soul gauge will determine how long you can combo for. However, certain enemy attacks will detract from your soul gauge, and that's not the only thing that will. You also have the ability to turn into a demon mid-battle. This uses a function called Consuming Claw or Heaven's Claw, depending on where you are in the game and what level of this ability you're using. Using Consuming Claw will take 1 point, 1 bezel away from your soul gauge. You have to have at least 3 to do this. Consuming Claw will automatically give you damage bonuses against the most common enemy on the battlefield. Initially, I thought it gives you bonuses against the enemy that you're targeting, but that wasn't the case. It confused me up until the midpoint of the game. Perhaps they explained this in the tutorial and I just wasn't paying attention, but it took some figuring out. So if there's 4 winged enemies and you're targeting an armored enemy, and you switch to Consuming Claw, you will gain buffs against the winged enemies and not the armored one you're facing. It's a little bit of a weird way to tackle it, but it works once you understand this. As you are in Consuming Claw or Heaven's Claw mode, your health will be constantly going down. So it's important that you attack the enemies as fast as possible and get yourself out of Consuming Claw mode. At the end of your combo chain, you will unleash one final attack unique to Consuming Claw mode. These are some of the best attacks you'll get besides your Mystic Art, which uses the burst gauge down here. This burst gauge, is it called burst gauge in this game? Which uses this gauge down here. You will need this charged up at least 4 times to pull off a Mystic Art. Mystic Arts are not as powerful as they were in the other games, and there is no Mystic Art that can target more than one of your party members at a time. This may be to better balance the game, however I found overall this game is a little bit easier than usual. You can use items in battle, but over the course of my 48-hour playthrough, I used maybe 20. That was likely around 12 life bottles and maybe 8 healing items. So let's go back to the soul gauge a little bit. I did say going into Consuming Claw will use 1 block from your soul gauge. I also said that enemies with certain attacks can take blocks from your soul gauge, so there must be a way to get more in the midst of battle, right? Well, of course there is. While you're attacking the enemies, you can see in the health bar above their heads, they also have a soul gauge. Getting enemies down to certain percentages of their health remaining will take a soul from their gauge and put it into yours. At least that's my understanding of it. So when you enter Consuming Claw and you use 1 block, it's important that you maybe target an enemy you can kill, so that you can get a soul back for your meter. Oftentimes, you'll get enough souls to fill your meter to its max. On that note, Consuming Claw is kind of overpowered most of the time. Yes, it might take your health down pretty quickly, but so long as you have a healer on your team, and so long as you use the right elements to attack the enemies, or the right types of attacks for the enemy types, you're never really gonna lose all of your HP in the run of a Consuming Claw. You're never really going to come out of Consuming Claw without a full soul gauge. Now, it will happen from time to time if you don't play it safe, and admittedly, I don't always play it safe, so it has happened to me quite a few times. But nothing to really hinder my battle experience. Nothing really made Consuming Claw particularly dangerous to use, and so I used it every battle, constantly, so long as I had the souls available to use it, which was almost always. That made the game, honestly, a little easier than it should. Never once have I seen the game over screen. I never seen more than 2 of my party members die at a time. Really, on normal difficulty, the game was just too easy. I probably should have switched it, but as I said, having to do Canadian things and work, I really gotta be able to beat my games in a timely fashion. And my reviews already come out late enough as it is, because I do like to beat games before I talk about them. In battle, you can switch out your party members on the fly. This uses 1 charge charge of your bottom meter here. Doing this will not only switch out a party member, but it also erases any status ailments you may have received. So it's good practice if you're paralyzed to switch out and then switch back in, and you'll come back without the paralysis. It's a great system really, and it keeps combat fast, fluid, and fun. So let's get out of the combat for a little bit and let's talk about the world. So I did say there's no world map. This is kind of irritating because everywhere kind of feels the same. You walk through a field to a dungeon. Maybe this dungeon is actually technically just a marsh. It still feels the same as walking around in the overworld. There's very little puzzles, and even though the palettes kind of swap from time to time, some of it just often feels really repetitive. So the world does kind of come off just feeling pretty darn homogenous. Most of the world doesn't feel too inspired, and not much of it looks too unique. Every now and then you might find something that seems a little bit original, but they are very few and far between. This world is really built by its characters and not its locations. To encourage you to explore the world, there are these cat's orbs all over the place. These cat's orbs open cat's chests, which unlock fashion accessories for your characters. These are funny, but putting most of them on will tend to ruin the seriousness of cutscenes, so personally this isn't something I would use until maybe my second playthrough, although I did switch out to Velvet's swimsuit as opposed to her regular suit. Maybe this was just so I could see her legs, because I've seen enough breasts in most of my games lately. But really, tracking down these cat's orbs is kind of just annoying. You might see something off in the distance, like a cluster of them, 3, 4, maybe even 10, and you might spend 30 seconds walking there, and that's all that's there. They are infinitely spawning, so you can grind them if you need to. So sometimes walking to the end of the map just to pick up 10 of them feels like a huge waste of time. It's a shallow attempt to make the world feel more populated and more rewarding to explore than it really is, because the rewards you get for it, they're simply just not that rewarding. Also, riding off how these cat's orbs are overpopulated on the map, that's not the only thing that suffers from overpopulation. The weapons. Now, weapons have skills, and if you leave your weapon on long enough, you'll permanently learn that skill. But the skills are randomized, and so sometimes you'll end up collecting 20 of the same weapon within an hour. Now, this is great on one hand because you can break these weapons down and use them to enhance the weapon that you are currently using or that you want to use, to make your most powerful weapon more powerful. However, collecting so many of them, 20 of each weapon, for each character, sometimes you can end up with hundreds of these at a time. And it's not just the weapons, it's belts and it's armor and it's boots and it's pendants and it's earrings. Sometimes you'll have a collection of nearly 300-400 of these things on your person at one time. So you want to sell them all, but you can't sell them in bulk. You can't say, I want to sell 99 of these, because technically they're all unique items because of their randomized skills. So you have to sell or break them down one at a time. You can spend 20 minutes at a time doing this sometimes. It's a huge time sink and a major annoyance. Outside of this, you have things like your cooking systems that have been in place since the early days of Tales. Nothing really new here. You can also send a ship off to explore different areas of the world. This will randomly generate 3 battles, which come back almost like a scratch ticket. Win, win, lose. Win, win, win. Lose, lose, lose. How you randomly perform in these battles determines what you'll get. Exploration is good because you can get new items, you can get new skills, you can get new recipes. Really, it's not something you shouldn't bother with. It's not necessary to progress the story, and you'll never feel too weak or anything if you don't use it, but it's there and it takes 2 seconds to send out a ship, so just put it to use. There's no cost and there's only reward. Just keep doing it. On the graphics front, I mean, the game runs really smooth. It was obviously developed for the PS3. I'm really happy to see that they didn't recycle as many resources as they did in previous Tales games. I got so sick of seeing the same handful of enemies in every game. This game offers a whole lot more new than the last few have, and that's really refreshing. But the world itself is kind of bland. Even though it's heavily populated with so many orbs you'd think you were playing a collectathon, there's really not a whole lot around to look at. The world design is just frankly not that fantastic. It was developed for the PS3, and it shows. Not a major detraction for me, but it makes me really want to see what a Tales game developed for the PS4 can actually accomplish. There was really only a few other things that stood out to me as negative in this game. A lot of the times it was really annoying enemies. I just didn't like the design of. There's these stag beetle enemies towards the end that can take your soul gauge down from full to empty within a single second. These guys were super annoying, and when you get into a battle with them, It's not just 1 or 2, it's usually like 7. They have way more health than they should, and taking them down just isn't that fun. They're not a fun enemy to battle. Some areas are way too populated with enemies. It gets to the point where somebody like me started to find myself avoiding battle. In RPGs, I usually get in every battle I come across, but where the game was also a little easier than it should have been, I saw no reason to do any of these battles. I didn't need the new weapons, I didn't need the experience, I didn't need anything from them. It was just starting to waste my time and get on my nerves. Also overpopulated was the skits. This was my biggest problem with the game. I love the skits in the Tales games, but when you get 5 of them back to back and you sit there for 20 minutes just watching skits, when you only have an hour to sit down and play a game, man, it just grinds on you, you know? And not like the sexy way, like a chick grinding on you in the club. No, it grinds on you mentally. I couldn't be bothered most of the time to watch the skits. If I could tell what the skit was about by reading the title, I would skip it. If the skit seemed really funny by reading the title, I might watch it. Some of them are good, some of them are charming, some of them are worth watching, but a good 80% of them are not, and I wasn't taking the gamble to watch them anymore after about the 30-hour mark. But that's really all the negatives I have to say about this game. Tales of Berseria on the PS4 is starting to become a return to form. This has given me hope that the Tales series can get back on track. You guys are on the right track, and I cannot wait to see what you do next. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about this. I know I was light on the story details, but guys, I don't want to spoil it, and this game has a lot to spoil that you're going to want to find out for yourself. So, thanks for watching, and if you haven't played Tales of Berseria yet, pick it up. So I'm bringing somebody in to give their testimony, so this review doesn't seem quite so biased. He just asked respectfully that I mask his identity, so here we go.
I love this game. I love this game. I love this game. Love, 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 love. It's okay. Love, 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 love. Not so much. Not really this one either. But this one? Love!
Thanks for watching, guys. I know this review is a little later than most. It's probably not even too useful anymore, but if you like what you see, why don't you leave me a like? If you don't like what you see, hit that dislike button. Drop me a comment, give me some criticism. I'm definitely interested in hearing what you have to say. Hit that subscribe button if you want to stick around to see more, and as always, thanks for watching.